This episode of Capes and Lunatics Sidekicks is brought to you by Tweaked Audio. To get awesome headphones, go to tweakedaudio.com and use the coupon code Southgate to get 30% off, free shipping, and a lifetime warranty. Or you can get there through the link on our website, southgatemediagroup.com. Hey everyone, Phil again, and once again, I've managed to somehow convince the great, the legendary Mr. Ron Frenz to join me for another conversation, this time for Thor the Worthy #1 and the Thunderstrike story. Hello, thank you once again, Ron.
Well, it's my pleasure, Phil. For a legend to speak to a legend, it's easy. It's no effort, believe me.
No legend, but
thanks for asking.
But I wanted to talk to you before this week, but once I read that Thunderstrike story, I was like, oh, I'm so glad we agreed to do this because, again, I mean, it's great. It reminded me of the 90s stuff. All right, before I get too far ahead of myself, how did this come about? Did they come to you and Tom, or did you guys go to them with like this idea of a story, or?
Oh, no. They had already come up with the idea of doing the one-shot Thor the Worthy and contacted Tom DeFalco first to see if he was interested. And I was as surprised as anybody, to tell you the truth. I mean, a lot of times when enough time has passed, you pretty much, put things away, put them up on the shelf. And but DeFalco contacted me and said, they're interested in a 10-page Thunderstrike story. Are you in? And I, of course, was. And we started discussing what we might do so that he could put together a pitch. The initial offer was made, and then there was some downtime because I didn't have any leftover ideas from our original run. And I told him that, and he wanted to go back and reread the entire run. He wanted to go back and reread the 24 issues over the weekend, and then we would talk on Monday, and that's when things finally really started to click, because he came back with wanting to include Code Blue, and Code Blue is something that I had a leftover idea for. I had long had an idea for a Code Blue, like a B story or something where they took on the Grey Gargoyle. Mm-hmm. And so that dovetailed with what Tom wanted to do. Tom was very interested in doing something about the aftermath of Officer Jackson being killed. So those two ideas kind of dovetailed, and we included both of them, and which is pretty much the way Tom DeFalco and I have always worked. But it was like going home again in many, many ways. I mean, I don't think we had too much trouble getting into it. Tom is a pro, and he did want to reread the run before he jumped in and started scripting, certainly. But he also, he wanted to do it before he even started plotting, because we had already discussed the idea of bringing him back, but we weren't interested in any way trying to take a bite of that on a 10-page story.
Yeah, okay.
It's something we had already faced with the miniseries. When we were offered the miniseries, we discussed the possibility of bringing him back, but quite frankly, Tom and I had lived long enough to know that as much as we love them, they don't come back. So, if Marvel insisted, and if Marvel was going to do it whether we did it or not, and they actually offered it to us, that might be a different thing. But Kevin's out there now. And, when he said they want a 10-page Thunderstrike story, I said, Kevin. And he said, no, Eric. And I went, really? So, it all kind of was a big surprise to us as well.
Yes, as a continuity nerd, I just want to thank you guys for putting in that it takes place after 7, so you kind of get like a general idea of when this story takes place within the series.
Yeah, I mean, what appealed to us was the idea. What Tom's real idea was in placing it after Jackson's death was knowing how Eric's story ends. We thought it would be interesting to kind of give him this moment where his path could have diverged. It was mentioned in the original run that a couple of the Code Blue people were thinking about taking early retirement. Know? So it occurred to us that, anytime you face something like this, Eric had other responsibilities, with Kevin and everything, even though Kevin was living with his mother at that point. Eric was never cavalier about the risks he was taking. So we figured it would be interesting to kind of explore that moment when Eric might have made a different choice and his story would have ended very, very differently, if at all, and why he would make the choice to stick with it. And we figured, we'll take a shot at doing that in 10 pages, and it was a fairly full 10 pages, but I'm happy with what we came up with, and I hope the readers enjoy it as well. Oh yeah,
I mean, as an original Thunderstrike fan, I love this story, and I won't spoil it for people, but I did love the Spider-Man joke. Like, I'm sure nothing like this ever happened to Spider-Man.
Oh yes, well yeah, that was something that as we were working on it, and after Tom saw I think it was my thumbnails. I'm not sure if he looked at my thumbnails.
Oh, okay.
Either when he saw the thumbnails or the pencils that he realized this kind of relates to that Spider-Man moment. And we kind of did our own little take on that. And I said, well, I guess you could see it that way. Yeah. So that was why he felt compelled to throw that line in there. Yeah.
The old Spider-Man team saw that right away.
There you go. But, he's never far from our hearts and minds. But it was fun touching back with Eric. And I mean, there were a few things. I mean, I'll be honest with you. There is a continuity glitch, a visual continuity glitch, in that towards the end of the Thunderstrike run, but it was much later than issue 7, and it was something that most readers didn't even notice. I updated Code Blue's equipment and outfits.
Okay.
And it was more towards the end when after he was battling Seth and everything. I think it was introduced in one of the issues where Seth had already shown up, and so it was more towards the end of the run. And I decided if I was going to do Code Blue, that I think I'd like to play. I never got a chance to really use that design too much, so I kind of used the updated costumes, even though it was kind of cheating the continuity a little bit, but. Nobody, like I said, I don't think anybody noticed the original costume change or design change, and I'm sure if I hadn't mentioned it, nobody would have called me on it on this either. So.
Well, you're honest.
Well, it was something that I actually argued with myself about. On my Facebook page, I put the panel that reintroduces Code Blue. From thumbnail to finished printed piece. And if you look at the thumbnail, and if you're, way too into this stuff, you'll notice that in the thumbnail, they're holding the rifles that they originally had, that they probably would have had if I had stayed with the real continuity, but I updated the weapons to what they had towards the end of the run. And, again, I'm sure nobody would have noticed if I hadn't stuck my big mouth out there, but I don't think it's going to ruin the story for anybody.
Oh no! Like I said, it's been a while since I read this, so yeah, I know I didn't notice. Now I'm gonna have to go back and be like, son of a gun, he's right.
Well, yeah, I decided since we kind of went through a thing that Code Blue had their own miniseries, if you remember, written by Roy Thomas. And, God, I forget who the artists were on it. Did Todd Smith? I know Todd Smith worked on some covers. and I know Charles Barnett III inked a lot of it, but I don't know if Todd was the artist on it or not. I'd have to go back and look. But at that point, they had already had their own miniseries and things like that. So Tom and I played with the idea that the NYPD was actually marketing Code Blue. Towards the end of the run on Thunderstrike, we did a scene where they were, Mad Dog was actually screwing around with Code Blue action figures.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
The NYPD had licensed them to the point where there was action figures and they were trying to make them into celebrities and all this kind of stuff. And along with that scene, I introduced their new gear, and so it was later in the run, but yeah, it was something that I liked the new look, and I was happy with it. And having a chance to do them again, I figured, what the heck, who's gonna care?
But I'm glad I have the man in charge of the look here, because I assume it's probably because like the different paper than like back in the 90s, and like you probably have a different colors and everything, but like the art just seemed like to stand out even more than like it did back then.
Well, one of the reasons that is because the editorial crew, Will Moss and his assistant Sarah, their intention, this was the decision that I was not a part of. They had decided, along with Rochelle Rosenberg, to do flatter color.
Okay.
To try to make it look a little bit more like a 90s comic, which, by the 90s we were playing with shading and stuff.
Okay.
So it's not as accurate as they might think, but I mean, they're all young people. So they think the 90s was a long time ago. And, but it was their idea to do the flatter color, the brighter, flatter color, to try to call back to make it look like an older story. And actually, there are quite a few people that are following me on Facebook who actually liked it when I ran some of the panels from it, that they were, wishing that other books could be done that way as well. And it makes perfect sense that older fans might appreciate it more than the younger fans. That was my only concern, is that did we really want to call it out to the point that it might turn people off? It might turn current fans off, that kind of thing. But, I mean, they came up with an interesting idea, and there was no reason not to play it through and see how it would be accepted. So you noticed it. Did you like it?
Yeah, I liked it, but again, I'm an older fan, so.
Well, okay. I have a feeling you and I have quite a few years between us.
Yes. Yeah. Like I said, I'm 41, so yeah, I was reading Thunderstrike in my teenage years. So.
Well, that makes sense then. Yeah, it was. I thought it was an interesting experiment. I think it was worth doing, and I hope overall people will appreciate it to one degree or another. I've only read one review of it so far, and the reviewers seemed to appreciate the story and liked it well enough. But he again was working off of his own memory of the original run. It's not like everybody went and dug out their Thunderstrikes to read them in preparation for Thor the Worthy. It's not like what people are doing where they're watching the entire Star Wars saga in preparation for Episode 9 or anything. And I understand that. So it is what it is. I mean, hopefully, if this does move you to go back and reread the original stories, this will fit right in. I was sorry we couldn't get Al Milgrom on board, the anchor,
yeah,
because he inked the entire run. I mean, Thunderstrike was his baby as much as mine, and because he joined us the last couple of years of Thor, and then came with us over to Thunderstrike. Unfortunately, when he was contacted by the editor, he was that week he would have had to start it and get a jump on it. He was recovering from hand surgery. And was unable to join us. And it broke my heart. I mean, we tried some high profile people and we tried some other people. It just wasn't going to work with schedules and everything. Fortunately, I had worked with Keith Williams on several other projects. I don't know if you remember his work over John Byrne on the Hulk.
Yes.
Over Pat Olive on Warlock and the Infinity Watch. He's done some incredible work over the years.
Oh, yeah.
also notably, he worked on the Phantom Daily strip for years and years as an anchor. But I love his stuff, and he's professional and fast, and was available. And he is a wonderful guy. He jumped in, whole hog. I barely got the question typed out, and he agreed. He said he was up for it. And I actually think his work is very similar to what Al Milgrom did on the strip. I mean, they're both brush guys to a large extent, and it's all technical stuff that nobody really notices. But I thought he very much matched the look of the original run, and was very happy with that Keith was able to help us out, and I owe him big time. So because the books are budgeted differently now as well, and they tend to at this point will tell you how much money they can afford to pay for the inker, and of course, for some of the veteran guys that was an issue, but wow. Keith was undeterred by the page rate. So it was wonderful to have him, and again, I think he matched the look. So hopefully, if people do go back and read the run, what they'll find is that this fits in fairly smoothly with the original run, and isn't going to stick out like a sore thumb or anything.
I don't think so. I'll have to let you know, because you said, no one's going to go back and reread the whole 24 issues. I don't know. I have a bunch of time off at Christmas time. I might have to break out my Thunderstrikes.
There are probably worse ways to spend it, I would think. It's been a while since I've read the originals. The last time I did, I was moved to call Tom DeFalco and say, occasionally we actually knew what the heck we were doing. And because I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I was reminded of certain things. When they usually send me like one comp copy when they collect the stuff into the trades. Mm-hmm. And as I've been getting some of the Thor stuff in trades, I'll reread sections of it. And Tom's a very talented guy. He's a technical writer. He's a real craft writer. And, so I would like to think that we're both as at the top of our game as we've ever been, that kind of thing. So it was really fun to get back together with him on the Spider-Man 10-pager for what was it called, the Sensational Spider-Man Self-Improvement.
Yes.
And for this 10-pager, it was wonderful, and I have to thank the editors for the opportunity. Will Moss, it was a terrific editor. I got to see the different phases of his copy editing and everything, every stage of it, now with email and everything. And I was very impressed with Will's insight and his comments, and they were all on point. So it was a wonderful experience all around. It really was. It was over too fast, but outside of that, it was a terrific experience. But
I mean, you two have the magic, because why else do you think they keep teaming you two back up?
Well, actually, it's interesting you say that, because Tom is going to be writing backups for Iron Man 2020.
Oh, really?
Since he basically created the character along with Herb Trimpe and Barry Windsor-Smith.
Oh, yeah.
For the Machine Man miniseries way back when. So he has been approached to write some backups for that, and he contacted me and asked me if I'd be interested, and I said absolutely. And C.B. Sobolski, the editor-in-chief, did not like the idea at all.
What?
He wanted to see Tom work with other people, probably more contemporary people. Tom seemed to think that it was probably more of a budget issue because they don't have a lot of money to throw around. So I think Tom, possibly because he's a good friend as well as a partner, he may have just been trying to soften the blow a little bit. But he said he thinks it's a budget issue. But I can see, the preference to change things up a little bit. Tom and I are not joined at the hip. His run on Fantastic Four was proof of that. He does not need me to make a mark. And, I did Superman without him, and I've done several projects without him. So as much as we enjoy working together when we get the chance, we're not joined at the hip. So.
Well, I'm also a regular Iron Man reader, and I would like to see that. So.
Well, when Iron Man 2020 debuts, he's going to be doing. I think they're 10-page backups. I think he's going to be doing 3 10-page backups.
Okay.
Of I think what he's going to center in on. If you remember, there were these supporting characters were they called the Wreckers or something like that kind of helped put Machine Man back together.
Oh, I think so. It's been so long since I read that. Yeah.
Yeah, and now that they're doing 2020 and doing their own version of it current day, I think he's going to center on those characters and kind of do the current day version of them or something. I don't know exactly. It's been a long time since I've read the miniseries as well. We never got to the point, where I pulled that out to reread it or anything because I was told I wasn't going to be a part of it early enough on that the most I had done was looked at some of the designs for the new Iron Man 2020, but that was about it. So, but yeah, it's not always going to be Tom and Ron, but I'm sure there's going to be terrific stories either way because Tom's a hell of a good writer.
Yes, he is. But speaking of, back to Thunderstrike, has there been any talk of maybe giving Kevin his own solo series again? I know he had the mini-series, but I know he's been as Guardians of the Galaxy.
Not that I've heard. Well, he's been part of the as Guardians of the Galaxy for that run. I don't know what the status of that book is or what Kevin's status was. The ones I bought and read, I'm not up to date. I'm sure I'm not up to date because I don't get out to comic shops that often. But I do have a handful of the issues. And from what I read, they didn't seem to be all that interested in making major changes to Kevin, as far as a character, I was sorry that I understand why, because they already had plenty of Valkyries on board between Angela and the other characters. But there's no mention with all this stuff that's been going on with Jane Foster and everything. I wonder what the status of Grunhilde would be, because she was a very but she was very much a part of Kevin's construction, of the ongoing Kevin stories. Believe me, if Tom and I would have had a chance to do more Kevin stories, Grunhilde would have been very much a part of it. So when they used him for As Guardians of the Galaxy, I was sorry that not only were they not using Grunhilde, there was no mention of Grunhilde returning to Asgard or whatever, And from what I understand, with the Jane Foster becoming the Valkyrie, I think all the other Valkyrie are gone or something like that, or depowered or dead or whatever.
I think so. Yeah, I read the first issue.
So it would be interesting to see what Grunhilde's status is, that kind of thing. I don't know. But, there hasn't been, nobody has approached us about it. It's nice that Kevin is being mentioned. Kevin even got a mention in Thor the Worthy that he was the current wielder of Thunderstrike and all that kind of stuff. I just actually dug into some stuff myself, at my studio to pull out some production stuff and pencil Xeroxes and designs and everything from the Thunderstrike miniseries with Kevin that I'm going to be featuring on my Facebook page to see if anybody has any interest in the development of that character and how Tom and I went about it. And it went through, it was not the easiest decision to make. We actually have some ideas of how we might have brought Eric back, but as I said, we decided not to do that because of our own personal feelings at the time, and that way too many characters come back, So we decided we liked the idea of doing the legacy thing since Kevin. We used Kevin in the MC2 as a legacy character, so we liked the idea of basically doing him in the 616, but wherever we turned right with the MC2 Kevin, we turned left with the 616 Kevin, So he's a very different character. But, there was a lot of development in a fairly short amount of time. A lot of different ideas were, because you could go anywhere with it, because the mace is magic. We played with the idea in the miniseries that he could pretty much look however he wants to look. It's a magic mace, and Grunhilde points that out to him, and he tries on a couple of different looks in the course of the miniseries, And because there was no limitation to that, I played with a bunch of different directions for what Kevin would look like as Thunderstrike before we settled in on what we thought was unique and something that would be different enough that it would appeal to the people that liked Thunderstrike, but also appeal separately to a potential new audience. Because Tom likes to. I mean, he likes to do teenage characters because he's hoping that we can still interest young people and teenagers in the comics. That he hopes that young people are still picking us up along with the 30, 40-year-olds that we have from before. You know what I mean? So much of the material isn't geared for younger readers anymore. So when Tom has a chance to create, he likes the idea of doing something that might possibly appeal to a younger demographic because we've kind of lost them over the years.
Yeah, I think we talked about that before. Is the distribution just isn't what it used to be either.
No, I don't think if you're not reading comics now, that the chances that even if you really enjoy the Marvel movies, the chances that you're going to proactively go to a comic shop and try to jump in. I'm sure kids are doing it all the time, but not in the numbers that we really would need to be as healthy as we were even back in the 80s,
Oh, yeah.
Which, when we still had newsstand sales and everything. I'm always very grateful that I got into the business while we still had the spinner racks in the mass market, and newsstand sales because, frankly, Tom and I always sold really well on the newsstand. Actually, we sold better on the newsstand than we usually did in the specialty shops.
Yeah, I know.
Thunderstrike was selling fine. I mean, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh no, I was just going to say I'm glad I started collecting when there was newsstands because I don't know if I would have bumped into the books and started collecting if there hadn't been newsstands or even spinner racks in the grocery store.
Yeah, I can guarantee I wouldn't have started. I'd like to think I would have.
Yeah.
But if I were the same age that I started, because I started at like 6 or 7 with. But you could find a spinner rack in the food store that your parents shopped in.
Oh, yeah.
And all this kind of stuff. And if not for that, I don't know if I would have, I certainly wouldn't have started as early as I did. And I would have missed out on a lot of really cool stuff. But yeah, I mean, and Thunderstrike as a character, it's amazing to me. I think we may have even talked about this before. When I go to conventions, it's incredible how many people were Eric fans. The book sold very, very well. The reason it got canceled, along with a bunch of other books that were selling pretty well, was because of the Ron Perlman deal. And at one point, Ron Perlman's people, who were not publishing people, decided that if you canceled half the line, the half that was left would sell twice as well. As if they were all like stamped out cans of beans or something like that.
Yeah.
In fact, Tom DeFalco, when he was at that meeting and that person said that, Tom laughed and realized that that person was serious. And that was probably pretty much when he got marked for dismissal. That was probably one of the things that got him fired was, as editor-in-chief, was the fact that he was not on board for that harebrained of a scheme. Because at the time when they did it, I mean, they canceled all the spin-off titles, Thunderstrike, War Machine, Horseworks, all those books were canceled at that point, even though they were selling, just to serve this game plan. And of course, it didn't work the way the person thought it would work, because if your favorite title is canceled, you don't just find another book to like. You'll spend that money somewhere else. You'll spend that money on a piece of pizza and a Coke, that kind of thing. So it didn't work. All it did was it lessened Marvel's market presence, which a lot of people thought they were kind of flooding the market anyway. So there were probably competitors who were happy about it, but all it did was cost Marvel market share by canceling half the line. So it was unfortunate, and we got caught up in it simply because we were a spin-off character. But our sales were strong. So I think that's the reason that I can still meet people at conventions who really read and enjoyed Thunderstrike, and there's quite a few of them out there because the book was selling well, and it's not like it was, falling between the cracks. I mean, it did get eyes on it, and people. It's incredibly gratifying because people did appreciate what we were trying to do. It was funny because we were trying to do a traditional character with supporting characters and everything, and a nice guy at a time when Wolverine was racking up a body count, the Punisher was very popular, and the books were taking a slightly darker turn and everything. And Eric was not that at all, and he wasn't like some grim ass-kicking vigilante character or anything like that. Although there were people who saw some of the covers and assumed that's what he was. But, so he was a likable character. We figure if you're going to create a character that you want people to pick up every month, maybe he should be somebody you wouldn't mind hanging around with once a month.
Oh yeah. I think I told you that already you, Tom, and Eric Masterson got me into Thor in the first place with that original run where he becomes Thor. And I think he was so popular because he was so relatable. Like, he's Spider-Man, but I mean, even Peter Parker's like a genius. I mean, Eric's just like a normal guy who got handed the hammer. It's like, okay, here, you're Thor now.
Exactly. The only thing that Tom was a little leery of was making Eric old enough to have a son. Because again, he likes to make a character as relatable as possible across all the different generations and the different groups of age groups and stuff. But what we liked about him having a son was the parallel to Odin and Thor.
Oh yeah.
Because ultimately, Tom and I believe that Thor was about family. In a lot of the same ways that Spider-Man is. You could say Spider-Man is about family because Aunt May was such an integral part of that strip. But Tom especially always felt that Thor was the story of family. If you look at the original run, the original Lee Kirby run, it was basically Odin's relationship with Thor and Thor's relationship with Odin, and the fact that Odin kind of stuck his foot in it by teaching him humility and giving him a bond to Earth. Odin was constantly confounded by Thor's bond with Earth, and it was his own fault, that kind of thing. So that was something that an aspect of the relationships that Tom always enjoyed, and we wanted to reflect that in an earthly identity in a very hopefully relatable way. And my brother at the time was a father, divorced father, and so it was something that I was connected to, and it was an aspect of the character that we really enjoyed.
I always took it too, like when I was younger, that also gave Eric like extra incentive to do the right thing, because he was like he's like, I got to be a role model for my son.
Absolutely, sure, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the scenes that I enjoyed the most were ones that involved Kevin. When he finally realized at one point when he was sharing identities with Thor before he took over himself, there was the Black Galaxy saga where Thor realized that he had larger responsibilities beyond Earth, and it was at that point that Eric realized that if this indeed was the way it was going to go, then his responsibilities to Kevin weren't just in keeping Kevin with him. He realized that really the best thing for Kevin, given the situation and given his commitment to Thor, was to give Kevin up in the custody battle and have Kevin go live with Marcy. So that was something that I thought those scenes were incredibly well done. Tom handled them incredibly well. And the other thing too was when we finally had Eric reveal his identity to Kevin as Thunderstrike. We did it in the course of a backup story, but at one point he just decided it was time. Kevin was old enough, and it was time for him to tell Kevin in case anything happened to him. That kind of thing. So, yeah, it worked out. I believe me, I have a lot of very deep affection for for the character of Eric Masterson, and for Kevin as well. And in this on the same level as with as for Peter Parker or Mayday or any of the characters that Tom and I have co-created and shepherded.
And all right, I'll let you go in a little bit, but so did you say in this new story in Thor the Worthy that it was Grey Gargoyle was your idea? Did you say it was an unused idea you had for the original series?
It was an idea I had for Code Blue. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
When we were originally playing with Code Blue, and there was some talk about using Code Blue in backups and things like that. I had come up with an idea for how Code Blue could take on the Grey Gargoyle. Some of the ideas were used in the 10 pages in the story we did. The original idea I had was, it was juxtaposing Stone's relationship with the rest of his team with Grey Gargoyle, and it was called Men of Stone. And that's originally what we started with. But as you've read it, and we don't want to give too much away, there are now women involved in the overall arcing story, and it's about making choices, and it's about making choices in relationships. And so it became Hearts of Stone. And then as we were talking about that moment for Eric, where he's come to the crossroads, and he could either quit and live or keep doing what he's doing, and ultimately it ends the way we know it ends. That's when it became Hearts of Stone, Feet of Clay. Feet of Clay being, fallible humans. So it evolved for the purposes of the story and for the characters involved. But yeah, and once Tom opened the door to Code Blue, and he knew he wanted to have something where Stone and Eric were having a conversation about whether or not to continue, then it became, okay, what's happening while they're having that conversation? What's the dynamic that's happening while they're having that conversation? And so we needed an adversary, and I contributed, how about Grey Gargoyle? And that's what we ran with. So in true DeFalco Frenz Marvel hoo-ha style, that conversation between Stone and Eric takes place in 2 panels in the midst of a lot of other action.
Yes. That's why I'm like, why don't they give you guys more work?
Well, like I said, I was happy with the conclusion with, yes, why Eric makes the decision he makes, because it's a very, it happens that he does something heroic in a very personal way with one of the characters, as you've seen. And, he was eye to eye with this character when he was called upon to be Thunderstrike. And so it made an impact on him that, this is a life that, how many people have, there has to be a moment when these characters are at their lowest that they have to consider how many people they've saved and what really would be the result if they quit. How many people wouldn't get saved if they quit, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's what we wanted Eric to we wanted to play out a situation where Eric would need to consider that. And the only other thing I really contributed, aside from what we've already talked about, is Tom has a tradition of ending his stories with the end for now. It's never just the end; it's the end for now.
Yes.
And I suggested if you check the end of the story, it ends with the end for then, because it was set in the past. So I suggested it. Tom liked the idea, so he used it, and I was very flattered. So anyway, yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have any other questions, there's no limit. I mean, ask me anything. I mean,
I think that's it for now. But me, I'll probably hit you up, in a couple months, be like, hey, can you come back and talk about something else?
It's my pleasure, man. I enjoy talking with you, and I'm flattered that you think of me. So anytime.
Do you have anything upcoming? Any work upcoming?
Outside of Blue Baron, I am working on for Sid Comics. I'm working on an issue which is actually, it's not just the Blue Baron. It's set in the Blue Baron universe, and it involves all the other characters. It's called the Heroes Union, which is their Justice League, their Avengers. And it is co-plotted and scripted by Roger Stern, and I'm penciling it now, and it's a terrific story that if you've read any of the Blue Baron material and Startup and some of the other superhero titles that Sid Comics is doing, it's a bit of a flashback that fills in the blanks of some stuff that came before, that's been referenced but came before. Something called the Cosmic Crusade that these heroes were involved with. So you get to see a lot of the characters meet for the first time and interact for the first time, and kind of fill in the blanks, and you get a real sense of who the Blue Baron was before the body switch that happens in Blue Baron #1 with Ernie Rodriguez. So it's been a lot of fun. It's a terrific story. I have been remiss in my duties as far as getting it penciled in a timely manner, but I am concentrating on just that now, and was working on it today, and it's a lot of fun. It's really good stuff. The really good news is, my understanding is that Sid Comics are going to be available at some point in the near future through Diamond Distribution.
Oh.
So they will be in many more shops than they are currently, and much more available for the discerning reader, because I am very proud to be a part of what Darren Henry is doing with these books, and I think they're very enjoyable reads, and he does a lot of thinking outside the box, and they're fun comics. He's a child of 70s Marvel, and they're very much in the spirit of 70s and 80s Marvel, and Sal Buscema is still inking and doing a wonderful job, and Glenn Whitmore is coloring it. It's very solid product that I'm very proud to be a part of.
But yeah, and if you have any links or any info, please send it to me so I can put it in the show notes for this episode.
Well, I mean, it's sitcomics.net is the main spot on the web that people can find, and then you can find a lot of reviews because they're available on Comixology initially as chapters, and then they're gathered for print in what Darren calls binge books that are like 60 pages of story for like $5, $4.
Oh, that's not bad.
No, it's a fantastic deal, and I can't wait for it to get in front of more eyes. I mean, we've been very gratified with the response so far from shop owners and from readers. But the more people we get in front of, the better. And as I said, I think it's terrific product. So hopefully, a lot of people will agree with me.
Oh yeah.
But that's my day-to-day. That's my main gig, along with doing commissions through CatskillComics.com. And between those two, I have plenty of work and have fallen behind currently, so I'm playing catch-up. Even though I've been doing this 30-some years, I seem to always be feeling like I'm playing catch-up. So.
And follow this man on Facebook.
One of these days, I'll get this right, Phil. That's what I'm waiting for. It may take another few years. I may have to be in this gig 40 years before I finally get it right, but I'm trying all the time.
All right. Well, again, thank you for once again sharing your time with me.
It's my pleasure, sir.
All right. Thank you, sir. Like I said, I'm sure I'll hit you up sometime in the future.
All right. I look forward to it. You take care of yourself, Phil.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.